In the year 2028, the apocalypse arrived and took over the Earth. At this moment, our protagonist was already out of ammunition. He was literally the last human being alive on Earth. Recalling the good times, he says goodbye while looking at a photograph. A monstrous hand appears, but he barely reacts as the creature lets out a piercing scream. He keeps looking at his photo expressionlessly until he grabs a rifle and slashes the monster. On top of a car, the protagonist shouts that he will kill many of these monsters, which number in the thousands. Everything is dark, and the man wonders internally if he is alive or dead while someone seems to be calling him. Upon opening his eyes, he finds himself in a classroom where everyone is staring at him harshly. He quickly gets up anxious. While the teacher reprimands him for sleeping in class, the students laugh at him, and he tries to comprehend the whole situation. The teacher tells him to sit down, but he is too confused by the situation and remains motionless. He then decides to go to the bathroom to splash some water on his face and realizes he has returned to his school days before the outbreak. Looking in the mirror, he notices that his scars are gone and that he seems weaker. He sees an infected in the mirror's reflection and immediately punches it. Realizing he was careless, he grabs a piece of glass as a weapon and turns to attack the enemy. Before he can strike, he realizes it's just a classmate and stops immediately. His eyes widen, and he is startled to realize that Gao Fei is in front of him. Gao asks the protagonist what got into him to act that way while examining the injury on his hand. At first, he didn't remember Gao because the memories were painful. But while bandaging his hands, he remembers that Gao died when the virus spread. Gao reminds the protagonist that it's Valentine's Day and asks if he has confessed to the girl he likes. After 10 years, he remembers this and gets irritated. Even though he had the courage to confess to the popular girl, he was ridiculed by her, who tore up his letter. However, Zuo doesn't remember this day because of that, but because the outbreak began that afternoon. Around noon, he and Gao are sitting on the stairs when Duan, the pink-haired girl, appears. Duan and her friends look disdainfully at Zuo, holding the letter he wrote for her. Zuo snatches the letter from the girl's hand, saying that it's disgusting that she came after him just to say this. He questions what he saw in her 10 years ago and says that her behavior condemned many people during the apocalypse, and one of the people condemned because of this was his best friend, Gao. On February 14, 2018, a meteor entered the Earth's atmosphere, breaking into several pieces that helped spread the virus on Earth. At first, everyone who was infected just fell unconscious. Those who resisted the virus found themselves facing 70% of the world's population turned into zombies. The survivors created weapons to fight the infected, but they were evolving and increasing in number. Meanwhile, at school, there's still 1 hour left for everything to happen, and Gao asks Zuo if he is writing a book. Gao asks what's going on with him, confessing to the idol and talking about the apocalypse. Zuo changes the subject and asks him to buy food. He asks Gao to buy canned food and other things, telling him he wants to simulate an apocalyptic scenario for his book. Finally, he asks Gao to call his parents, asking them to buy medicine and meet at the abandoned boarding school. The protagonist's parents died a long time ago in a car accident, and he hopes Gao calls his. Running quickly, he reaches the abandoned boarding school, where many manage to survive for a long time. This place is useful because it has many materials for survival, and he also manages to find a crowbar. Already inside the boarding school, he prepares the crowbar and comments that the infected were slow at the beginning, so this place is a great shelter. He begins training and says he must do everything better this time, including getting close to Duan Churu again. The school's students go to the abandoned boarding school to confront Zuo. The sports club representative starts fighting with the protagonist for making the idol look bad. This bully rolls up his sleeves and gets ready to beat up the boy. He easily stops the bully with a stick pressed against his head. In a dark tone, Zuo says that one more step, and he will kill the guy. Filled with fear, he kneels and doesn't try to react. Zuo yells for everyone, especially the pink-haired girl, to get out of his sight. Outraged, the bully and his friends say that sooner or later they'll get rid of Zuo. The idol decides to confront the sports representative, asking if he wasn't supposed to be good at fighting. He says the boy's face was terrifying, and he felt like he was going to die, so he decided not to do anything. Suddenly, what appeared to be shooting stars streak across the sky during the day. Meanwhile, in Japan, these meteors begin to appear as well. The same is true for New York, where Times Square is hit. The same thing happens in Rio de Janeiro, and people film it, believing it's shooting stars. However, the boy is the only one who knows what's really happening while people think it's a gift from God. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and they think it's an earthquake. But the protagonist knows the apocalypse has begun, and people are falling unconscious at this moment. At 2 p.m., hell began on Earth. A red-haired girl calls out for Xian, asking if she withdrew with the army. The red-haired girl's eyes roll back, and black liquid pours from them and her mouth. Zuo starts calling out for her but realizes it's just a hallucination. Gao panics when he realizes an entire day has passed and they'd been asleep. Tianchen tells him not to worry about it. The friend asks if he's okay, as he's been acting strange since the day before. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoes, and the friend asks what it is. Zuo says it has started. At the moment he says this, an infected person appears, entering through the door. Gao believes it's just a teacher at work. He starts to approach the man with small talk. But before he could get closer, Zuo quickly acts. He strikes the man on the head with a piece of wood, and the man collapses. His friend watches in shock, thinking it was an innocent person. He starts yelling at Zuo, who quickly cuts him off and explains the first rule of survival: never hesitate in front of a zombie. With his back to his friend, Zuo asks him to grab his backpack, and says that Gao is about to see that the world has changed forever. Gao wonders if he's dreaming as he looks outside. They both see several infected wandering the area. Some of these zombies are behaving aggressively until one of them seems to notice their presence. Quickly, the protagonist fends off the approaching zombie. While his friend is in a state of shock, Zuo tells him to stay alert and dodge to avoid danger. He turns, leaving several incapacitated zombies behind. At that moment, the pink-haired girl and a friend of hers are desperately fleeing from the zombies. The bald guy hits a zombie with his baseball bat, telling Churu to run. Gao comments that the girl's friends were in trouble, and the protagonist says they should focus on their own safety right now. Suddenly, the hero pushes a zombie away to protect Duan. With his back to her, Zuo throws the zombie off to the side, and the girl, crying, calls out his name. He tells Gao to stay close and not worry too much about the undead. Duan Churu laments when she sees one of her friend's headless bodies after it became infected. She then stands up and decides to go after them. At the school, zombies surround a room that is locked. Inside, the group of youngsters is seeking shelter. Zuo tells his friend to catch his breath, while he realizes that his stamina is terrible compared to 10 years in the future. Duan begins to cry, and the protagonist tells her to shut up. The idol's friend points his finger at the boy and threatens him. However, Zuo notices his bleeding wrist and asks if he is hurt. The bald guy says he's bleeding a bit because of Deming. At this point, the hero explains that the first infected came from the meteorite, and the next ones came from the bites. He says the virus is known as Ebola. He explains that the virus only affects humans and is spread by water, air, and direct contact, with direct contact being the worst form of infection. In other words, being bitten by them means the person will turn. The idol's friend gets irritated and accuses the protagonist of watching too many horror movies and hallucinating. Quickly, he retorts, saying the bald guy will turn in 10 minutes. Holding the baseball bat, he asks if he wants him to put him out of his misery. However, the man doesn't like that and tells him to back off. In a calm voice, Zuo says he's already turned because he isn't even feeling pain. At this moment, the guy looks at his hands holding the bat and notices bulging veins on his arm, and his eyes widen. He tells the pink-haired girl that he'll be fine, but she tells him to stay away. Gao realizes that she betrayed him very quickly, even though he sacrificed himself to protect her. Suddenly, they hear a crash and realize the principal has crashed his car while fleeing, and several infected surround him. In a somber and impassive tone, the protagonist offers to kill him to solve his problem more effectively. However, the boy panics and tries to believe that Zuo is lying. Zuo calls Gao to leave the place. Quickly, Duan grabs his arm and asks to go with them. She lets go of her infected friend's arm, telling him not to touch her, but he just wanted to talk to her. With tears in his eyes and a melancholic expression, he starts to open up to her. But suddenly, a box cutter slashes his face horizontally. It was Duan who cut him, saying he should die alone and shouldn't have interfered with her escape. He raises his arm toward her but quickly gives up. Meanwhile, they run, and the protagonist advises them that zombies not yet evolved can be killed with blows to the head and spine. After his best friend hesitates a lot, he finally gathers strength within himself to attack a zombie. He hits it in the face with his axe and kills it easily. Seeing the blood dripping from the axe blade, he lets out a sigh of relief and feels good about what he did. The girl asks the two to wait for her, as she was so worried she couldn't catch up with him. Zuo extends the blood-stained crowbar in front of the girl's face, and asks why she followed them again. Without directly answering the question, she only begs them to take her along. Gao asks Zuo to take her too. Zuo says he is indifferent. After all, they don't have time to deal with her right now. The only condition the protagonist places is that she follows his orders. Otherwise, she'll be in big trouble. Outside, several zombies still surround the area. Gao considers jumping over the wall, but his friend says it's too risky, and the plan is to turn on the loudspeakers to attract the zombies. And he comments that this will be their time to escape. His friend asks what will happen to him then, but Zuo tells him not to worry, and he runs towards the room. Meanwhile, Gao asks the girl if she's okay, and she hesitantly says yes. Duan starts flirting with Gao in a strange way, thanking him for helping her earlier. Gao gets embarrassed by Duan's behavior, throwing herself at him. With her breast pressing against his body, she begins to say that Zuo is very harsh, and Gao is the opposite of him. Internally, the girl plans a way to manipulate him, saying that because he is a virgin, it's easier. The boy laughs and agrees that he's a nice guy, but quickly takes a stern stance and asks her to stop talking about his friend. Meanwhile, the zombies are feeding on a teenager's body until 2 soda cans catch their attention. Attracted by the cans, the zombies move toward them. Zuo, who set the trap, says it's still easy to deal with zombies in the initial stage. Arriving at the broadcasting room, he wonders which button starts the transmission. Behind the protagonist, an infected person appears. Focused on the screens in the broadcasting room, he seems unaware of anything. The infected charges at him, but the protagonist grabs it by the neck with both hands. Straining to hold the zombie, he imagines it might be a semi-evolved one. Being pushed against the table, he knows he can't let himself be bitten, as he has no resistance to the virus. His eyes widen as he struggles to contain the monster. Beside him, he notices 2 sharp metal knitting needles. He begins to stretch his arm to reach the tool. While the infected is about to bite the hero's neck, he quickly strikes with the metal needles. He thrusts the tool with all his might into the infected's head. Within seconds, the zombie is dead and falls to the ground. He sighs in relief, grateful to be alive, seeing he came very close to death. Looking at the monster's body on the ground, he comments that he's surprised to see a zombie in the broadcasting room. He continues to laugh with relief, thankful that the infected was only semi-evolved. Looking at a framed photo in the hand of a pink-haired girl resembling the zombie, he imagines it could be her. He concludes that she was the school announcer and was knitting for her boyfriend, which explains the 2 metal needles. Suddenly, over the school loudspeakers, an announcement begins to play, saying that the exercises are starting. Zuo, speaking on the loudspeakers to attract the zombies, says the first exercise will be stretching and starts counting. Outside, Gao and Duan realize the plan worked, but they see the gate is locked. Gao strikes the gate's lock with his axe, breaking it easily, then pushes the gate open to create a path. The blonde boy asks Duan to watch the gate, but she nervously asks what she'll do if the monsters come back. Out of nowhere, the school bus appears, and the driver tells them both to get on. Duan urges the boy to get on the school bus, but he decides to wait for his friend. The girl bites her lip and seems displeased with his response. The bus driver asks Gao to get on. When the boy says he's waiting for Zuo, the driver says he saw him kill someone, and Duan says they should close the gate immediately. Another passenger agrees with the girl and says they should close the gate, while the driver continues pressuring Gao to get on. The girl keeps manipulating Gao to leave without his friend. However, he realizes this and says she's a dirty person who stabs everyone in the back. Angrily, the boy opposes them and says he will kill anyone who tries to close the gate. Duan's expression completely changes, and she becomes irritated. The passengers are in complete shock at the scene. Other passengers also look perplexed and wonder who the man is and what he is doing. Even with the driver saying there will be consequences and they should go to the city now, Gao remains unmoved and continues to be firm. The boy screams shrilly and exclaims that he got what he wanted as the bus departs. Meanwhile, behind him, a cadaverous hand approaches him. Suddenly, this hand grabs his jacket from behind and pulls him. He widens his eyes and is completely stunned. At this moment, he realizes it's a zombie trying to attack and bite him. The infected knocks Gao to the ground and climbs on top of him to try to bite him. Quickly, he puts the axe in the zombie's mouth to prevent it from biting him. Exerting force against the zombie's head, he uses both hands on the axe to avoid being bitten. Internally, he tells himself he won't be able to hold on much longer against the creature. He says he doesn't want to die like this, without a girlfriend. Suddenly, the zombie's head goes flying, disconnecting from its torso. Gao sighs in relief. In front of him stands Zuo, holding the crowbar he used to kill the zombie attacking Gao. With a calm expression on his face, Zuo extends his hand towards Gao and says he almost didn't make it in time. Walking through the forest, Zuo comments to his friend that not getting on the bus wasn't a mistake. If there had been an infected on board, it would have been worse. And going to the city is also a death sentence, according to Zuo. Gao comments that he's angry with Duan, and our protagonist says they should find shelter to rest. Talking to himself, our hero is thankful that Afei didn't get on the bus. The last time it all happened, a student hid his injuries and began to transform during the trip, where everyone panicked and had to flee from the vehicle. However, the loud sound of the crash attracted a horde of zombies who pursued the students. When Gao and Zuo were fleeing desperately and seeking shelter, the pink-haired girl did not let them in. At this moment, Afei gives up and comments that it's impossible for the girl to open the door. Completely overwhelmed with tears, the protagonist's friend tells him to run without him since he is injured. The protagonist, in that distant past, was weak and left his friend behind, fleeing alone. Now, in the present, his companion asks where his mind is wandering, offers him food, and says he knows a shelter. The protagonist accepts the food and believes that God has given him a second chance to fix his past mistakes. In front of a garage, the protagonist asks if his friend is talking about this place. He replies yes because this garage belongs to one of his relatives, and by chance, they left the key with him. As our hero opens the garage door, he tells them both to be careful. When Gao is passing through the door, Zuo tells him to close it well and check the place from the inside. Asking about the next plans, Gao says he wants to see his family, but the protagonist says he's looking for someone first. His friend, with a silly smile, asks if it's a girl or a potential girlfriend. The protagonist, with an ironic smile, says that Afei is very optimistic. The moon lights up the night in the streets of Japan at this moment. Outside Afei's family garage, several zombies bang on the door, trying to get in. Zuo calms his friend, who has a worried expression on his face, saying it's impossible for the zombies to break in. The protagonist teaches his friend that they were infected with the same virus as these monsters, but they underwent mutations. Most people mutated suddenly, causing their bodies to collapse. However, a small number of people managed to resist the mutation and even control it. Through this control, they can enhance their bodies and even develop some resistance to the virus. Gao asks our protagonist how he knows all this. Zuo tells his friend not to worry about it, and says he will teach him a breathing technique to increase his evolution speed. He begins to meditate, and calmly tells Gao to focus on every part of his body and, if he feels any pain, to fight against it. He also mentions that the virus will accumulate in one part of the body, and that will be the path of evolution. Just like before, Zuo's palms evolved. People like him are known as palm-line evolutionaries. This is the universal form of evolution, meaning his abilities have increased, making him average in all aspects. Last time, he had to go through a lot to learn this breathing method that led him to evolution. This time, however, he has an absolute advantage. This advantage is having experienced the entire last decade before everyone else. The landscape is of a chaotic and destroyed city. A boy in a blue striped jacket runs, holding the hand of a red-haired girl. The girl stumbles and falls, crying. The boy asks if she's okay, and the girl says she twisted her ankle. Suddenly, he looks back and sees a horde of zombies coming to get them. In a heroic act, he lifts her and carries her on his back. The girl tells Tianchen not to worry about her and to run away alone, but he refuses and says he will make sure she lives. He starts running desperately with her on his back. But up ahead, he realizes the bridge is broken. The zombies are quickly running after the two of them. He comments that there won't be any other way. The girl tells him again to let her go and run alone, but he refuses again. Gaining momentum, he tells her to hold on, and decides to jump from one side of the bridge to the other. With enough momentum, he jumps from one side of the bridge to the other, successfully landing safely with the girl on his back. Or so he thought. In reality, the girl slips and starts to fall off the bridge. He tries to grab her hand to keep her from falling. Both with outstretched hands try to hold on, but there's no time. Tianchen falls off the bridge, and Zuo can't save her. Sweating with fear, he wakes up from a nightmare, screaming Tianchen's name. While his friend seems to be having a rather exciting erotic dream, the day begins to brighten outside. Tianchen prepares a motorcycle to go after the person he mentioned earlier. Before he goes, his friend calls out to him. Smiling positively, he asks his friend to bring the girl back as soon as possible. Sarcastically, Tianchen says he would do that even if he hadn't asked. In an ordinary Japanese neighborhood, the protagonist apparently doesn't see any zombies. He gets on the motorcycle and makes the final adjustments to ride through the city after the girl. The protagonist asks his friend to be careful and not let anyone in. He retorts, saying he's not a child. Before he could finish talking, Zuo speeds up the motorcycle, and his friend tells him to come back soon. Focused, he grips the motorcycle handle and accelerates. In an instant, he speeds up and quickly heads off on his way. Gao orders his friend to return safely. As he rides through the streets on the motorcycle, he reflects that he didn't tell Afei the truth, and the girl was indeed his girlfriend in his previous life. Her name is Tianchen, the most important person in his life. But at this moment, the two of them are still complete strangers who have never met. He stops at a 24-hour convenience store. He says he doesn't remember these streets from 10 years ago. A can falls to the ground, surprising our protagonist. Two zombies come at him voraciously. Our hero grips the axe tightly in his hand and maintains a neutral expression on his face. In an aggressive and brutal impulse, the protagonist delivers an extremely swift and powerful blow to the zombies. In an instant, he has already taken care of the zombie threat, but a piercing scream emerges from afar. Gao wonders if it was humans who made that scream. Inside a car surrounded by zombies, we see two frightened sisters, with the older one trying to calm the younger one. The zombies are trying at all costs to break into the car. The window suddenly breaks, and the sister can't contain her fear of imminent death that takes over her body. One of the zombies gets into the car in the passenger seat. Tianchen appears and grabs the zombie by the pants, throwing it far away. The zombie crashes against the wall, breaking it. The difference in the protagonist's strength after meditating is noticeable. The older sister and the younger sister are shocked but relieved by the hero's presence. The other zombies look at him in astonishment. He delivers a powerful kick to the creatures' heads. His kick sends the monsters flying away. The little girl looks in awe at her savior. He moves extremely quickly behind another zombie and grabs its torso, executing a suplex that slams its head into the ground. The girl thinks everything her hero is doing is amazing. After these moves, he realizes that his strength and reaction time have truly increased, making him one of the strongest in the world. 2 more zombies charge at him, and he doesn't back down at all, quite the opposite. Within moments, the problem is already solved. The 2 zombies are already defeated by now. He seems a bit tired, and there's blood on his face, while the girl's sister thanks him. Tianchen tells her they should go to a safe place and recommends they go to the 24-hour convenience store. The sister asks what he will do, and the protagonist tells her he'll go later. They head toward the store until the little girl comments that her teddy bear is missing. While the protagonist is pouring gasoline on the car, he notices that the lines on his hands, indicating his new abilities, are showing. With a sort of sixth sense, the protagonist feels that there are still zombies nearby. The younger sister asks the older one if the boy will be okay and says she wants to leave the store to make sure, but she concludes that she should take her sister with her and grabs her hand. Meanwhile, a horde of zombies charges at the protagonist, who coldly assesses the situation. With a lit cigarette in his mouth, he throws it toward the gasoline he poured on the car. In an instant, the car ignites, and a massive explosion causes the flames to consume the zombies. While this happens, the hero stands with his back turned, a cold expression on his face. The older sister is holding a cleaver in her hands as she witnesses the car explosion. In the reflection of her eyes, we see a kind of doubt and despair regarding the protagonist. He questions her about why they aren't waiting inside the store. Back at the convenience store, the boy asks the little girl if the other is her mother, and she says she's her sister. In his hands, he shows a teddy bear, saying he found it inside the car. The girl thanks our hero a lot, who is happy with her gesture. While he drinks water, the girl asks if he found her sister attractive, and he says yes. Bluntly, she asks why he doesn't become her brother-in-law and start dating her sister. He gets irritated and says kids shouldn't say things like that. The older sister says she doesn't like the idea of taking food like this since it's stealing, but the protagonist says that if she doesn't do it, others will. She comments that she was a teacher at a girls' school until yesterday, and in the blink of an eye, the whole society collapsed. The protagonist is surprised and asks enthusiastically if the school was Xingxing, and the woman says yes. Holding her shoulders, he asks if she knows Su Ruoxian. She first asks him to let go, and he apologizes. But she comments that yes, she is Xian's teacher and asks if the boy knows her. With a more downcast tone, he says they are friends, but internally he knows they haven't met to that extent yet. The older sister says that Xian is smart, and nothing should have happened to her, and that she might still be at the school. Realizing the danger the protagonist is facing for Xian, she asks if they are friends or dating. Suddenly, she gives him a kiss on the cheek, which leaves him embarrassed. He is confused, and she says it is a thank you kiss since they are parting ways now. The younger sister, crying, asks if they can follow the boy since he is nice and will protect them. The older sister says not to bother the man since he has his own matters to resolve and that one day they will meet again. The boy gently places his hand on the girl's head and asks if her sister knows how to drive, and she nods. He tells them to hurry as they are about to leave. Now outside, the 3 are on Tianchen's motorcycle while he drives. The woman comments on how scary it is to see the world in ruins like this. To try to calm them down, the protagonist says they should think of it as a horror movie virus. He quickly parks and says they have arrived at their destination. He stops in front of a car and says that breaking into this type of car is his specialty. The older sister scolds him, calling him a student, and saying that this is illegal. She also says they should go to a police station to look for Xian, but he doesn't seem to like the idea. He points to a police officer turned into a zombie and asks if that's the officer they should be asking for help. The teacher is shocked. The protagonist asks her name. Facing the zombie police officer, she responds that her name is Luo. Stepping forward, he strikes the police officer in the face with the crowbar, killing him. The protagonist says the world has changed into something beyond her imagination. Luo is terrified while the little girl is impressed, and Zuo's expression seems more violent. As he searches the corpse, the protagonist comments that the police officer had good equipment but no weapon. Dressed in the police uniform, he remarks that regular infected shouldn't be able to bite through these clothes. Handing a weapon to the teacher, he tells her that public order is gone, and she should focus on protecting herself. He says he has done everything he can for them and that he modified the car. He tells them to go find Gao, saying they came because of Zuo Tianchen. The teacher concludes his name is Zuo, and he agrees. The sister says her full name and that of her younger sister, which is Luo Xiaoshui, and asks the hero to be careful. As the teacher accelerates the car, our protagonist speeds up his motorcycle. She orders the boy to return safely, and he says he will. The teacher drives calmly until her sister says she might miss her chance when he finds his girlfriend. The older sister, in a more melancholic tone, says she knows but there's nothing she can do. The younger sister says that adults are strange. There is an enormous and unusual traffic jam throughout the city. The protagonist realizes that not even his motorcycle will get through this traffic. He gets off the motorcycle and decides to walk, but something ahead catches his attention. Noticing a police car in the middle of the line of cars, he imagines there might be a weapon inside the vehicle. Looking through the window, he sees a dead police officer with his head on the steering wheel, and looking at the seat, he notices a simple gun lying around. Suddenly, a zombie slams its hands on the glass and makes a noise. In the blink of an eye, someone flies out of the car. The glass shatters right in front of Zuo. An extremely strong man in a suit seems to have thrown the zombie away, commenting to himself that there are cars all around and it's not possible to move away from the infected. The zombie lets out a huge scream when a shard of glass hits its forehead. The protagonist looks stunned and quickly smashes its head against the nearby car. But the moment the infected's head is smashed against the car alarm goes off, as do all the others. We see the protagonist using a combat knife to stab another zombie. Crouched in front of the newly dead body, he says it won't be possible to fight a horde in the middle of this sea of cars. He knows he will need the police officer's weapon. Meanwhile, at the school, the dark corridor leads to a specific room, the first grade class 4 room. Inside the room are 3 high school girls. A red-haired girl with yellow eyes is in a catatonic state, hugging her knees. Another girl comments that she sees someone on the street. They comment that he killed several monsters but set off the car alarms, and now a horde is after him. On top of the police car, he counts the bullets and realizes that 35 won't be enough. He jumps from car to escape the zombies, but he is slowly being surrounded. One of the girls asks why he's on top of the bus instead of running, and her friend says it's to avoid being surrounded. But a daring zombie climbs onto the bus and comes face to face with the irritated protagonist. In a swift move, he strikes with his crowbar and throws it far away. He comments that unless it's absolutely necessary, he won't use the pistol. With that, he continues attacking other zombies with his crowbar, crushing their skulls and sending them to hell. He shouts for the zombies to come at him, saying he will kill them all. The girls discuss whether they should ask him for help because they don't know his intentions or if he will survive this situation. In total frenzy, the protagonist attacks the zombies madly, killing them all, determinedly affirming to himself that he won't die there. The sun sets in the background. Hundreds of infected bodies are lying on the ground. Zuo leans on his axe as dusk arrives, along with the last zombie. He feels his strength fading and realizes he needs to rest, but the zombie charges straight at him. The creature gains momentum and leaps toward the protagonist. Quickly, he puts the bar of his crowbar into the zombie's mouth, making it bite down on the metal. The protagonist pushes the crowbar against the zombie. He gets irritated with the zombie, calling it weak, saying it hasn't even evolved to the second stage, and he delivers a powerful blow to the monster's head to kill it instantly. The infected flies off the bus. A huge bang is heard. A shot from a pistol explodes the head of another infected. Tired, the protagonist finishes off the zombie with a shot to its head. Completely exhausted, the hero falls to the ground and tries to use this moment to test his resistance to the virus. The black-haired girl tells Big Sister Sha that the boy killed all the zombies. She is surprised and asks about his current condition. The girl replies that he seems to be resting while the other asks if there's any chance he might save them. Meanwhile, in his deep, personal meditation, he realizes it is time to organize and modify the cells of the Ebola virus and gather them in their place of origin. After the first stage, the gathered spots will form a pattern that will increase his physical abilities. He activates the 10,000 abilities system. He imagines he should now be able to kill non-evolved infected much more easily since he has twice the strength of a normal human. Even without testing his other abilities yet, he assumes they must be strengthened. But most importantly, his recovery and immunity. Now he can sense objects within a radius of 5 meters, and if he activates his perception mode, it goes up to 20, but it restricts his movements. However, the spiritual system is much more powerful. Before, Xianxian could see an entire kilometer. He wonders if Xianxian is at the school. Looking toward the school, he says he is going to meet her. The sky is illuminated by the moon on this dark night. As he focuses on his senses, Zuo detects 2 nearby vital signs that he believes are infected. Knowing his range isn't that great, he assumes there must be more of them, so he throws a can to distract them. The 2 zombies are attracted by the sound and run toward the can. He spots about 5 zombies on top of a wall. He notices that they are 5 non-developed types, and with his current abilities, he thinks it will be easy to handle them. It is a perfect moment for him to test his abilities after his evolution. He jumps down from the wall he was perched on toward the group of infected. As he lands, he brings 2 zombies to the ground, crushing their heads. He feels that his coordination and reflexes have increased threefold. The other zombies rush toward him while he still holds the 2 bodies in his hands. He realizes that difficult moves seen in movies, he can now easily perform in real life. Executing a precise cut, he eliminates 3 heads at once in a single strike. In his current state, first stage zombies are no longer a threat to him. Inside the classroom, the girls' resources are running low, and they fear dying of hunger. They discuss whether they should go out at night through the corridors to look for food. The red-haired girl with yellow eyes decides to grab the flashlight. The 3 of them head out together into the corridor in the middle of the night. With their flashlights pointed ahead, they sneak through the corridors. They decide to split up to search for supplies. The girl with yellow eyes starts searching through her classmates' backpacks to find something. Under a desk, she finds a bottle of water. She celebrates her discovery. Suddenly, one of the girls is startled and can't hold back a scream. Tianchen, entering the school, realizes there are people there because of the scream. The pink-haired girl becomes worried and asks the hamster to let her go because she is concerned about her friends. Outside the classroom, one of her friends runs frantically while an infected student chases her. The girl runs desperately, and the yellow-eyed girl shouts for Shaoling. But it is no use. In the blink of an eye, Shaoling is bitten on the neck by an infected student. Behind her is another dead friend, and in front of her, Shaoling is being eaten alive by a zombie. The zombie devours the girl's neck. The other girl agonizes on the ground as her life fades before the eyes of her surviving friend. The infected notices the presence of the only living girl. Quickly, the girl starts to run frantically, but the infected one chases her. Inside the school, Zuo realizes that the noise he made earlier attracted many infected, which he did not expect. He draws both pistols, finally ready to use them, as he doesn't want to get hurt. He quickly starts shooting at the zombies. As the gun cools down, the protagonist notices the infected are evolving, and he wonders if it's supposed to be this fast. Reloading the magazine, he notices he only has 25 bullets left, and knows he needs to conserve them. In the dark corridor, lit only by the moon, we see several zombies lying on the ground. Looking to the side, he sees zombies trying to attack a window. To check if there are any survivors inside the room, he decides to use his detection ability. The surroundings are safe, but inside the room, he senses the presence of a girl. He grips his weapon tightly. The girl, crying and hugging her knees, begs the zombies not to come in. Suddenly, she notices the noise has stopped. Relieved, she wonders if the infected have gone away. Someone knocks on the door, and the girl is startled, falling back. But since it's a human voice, she calms down. She opens the door with a smile, coming face to face with Tianchen, who has a serious expression. She quickly asks if he has any food because she is very hungry. The protagonist gives her food and water for her pet. While the girl devours Zuo's food, he asks if she knows Xian, and she says everyone knows her since she is the queen of the school. She asks if he is looking for her, and he nods. She comments that many people fled earlier, and others hid, and if she's at the school, she's definitely hiding. The protagonist is surprised by the girl's necklace and asks her where she got it. She exclaims for him to let go since the item is hers, and she asks what he is trying to do. Our hero asks the girl if her father is Luo Rehang. The girl asks if he knows her father, and the protagonist says they are friends. He puts his hand on her shoulder and says he will take her to see her father. She lets go of his hand and says she has no desire to see her father. However, she says she will follow him since he has food. With a lit cigarette and a half smile, he says that's good, too. They then shake hands, sealing a deal between them. We see a ruined, seemingly deserted place from the protagonist's past. Zuo and Luo, the girl's father, walk together searching for resources, but they seem unsuccessful in their quest. Suddenly, our hero senses something strange. He tells Uncle Luo that something is wrong, and the man says he noticed it too. A green creature with an erratic and sinister form emerges from the shadows. Several green roots form its bizarre body, and its eyes glow red. The protagonist comments that it's the claw type. Internally, he considers that the 2 of them alone won't be enough. Luo tells him not to panic and asks him to cover him while he deals with the creature. They comment that they need to finish this quickly. In the blink of an eye, the creature flies at Uncle Luo, who is already wielding his 2 machetes. He quickly delivers several powerful slashes to the creature. It screams in pain but retaliates, throwing the man away. As Luo is thrown, he breaks through the walls he passes. He calls out for Tianchen, who understands the message and starts shooting at the monster. The monster looks at the hero with a hateful expression as his ammunition runs out. Suddenly, the monster charges at him with full force, and our survivor looks completely desperate. Before it can strike, Luo cuts off one of the creature's arms with his machete. Pivoting his foot back and gaining momentum, he prepares to deliver another blow. He slices the creature into several pieces, finishing it off. The two sigh in relief because this time it was really close, and Zuo, surprised, asks how Luo suddenly got so fast. He opens his shirt and shows his body, revealing his well-defined physique and showing that he has evolved. Tianchen says he expected nothing less from number 1, and a modest Luo says he should train in the breathing techniques he developed. In the middle of a military fort, they start talking. Luo seems distracted, looking at something, and his friend notices and asks what it is. He looks at a pendant he gave his daughter for her birthday, a pendant both of them have. Surprised, the protagonist questions him about having a daughter and never mentioning it before. The man says her name is Luo Lan Sha, and because he is a soldier, he doesn't spend much time with her. Zuo asks where she is, and crying, the girl's father says she must be 18 now, if she is still alive. As he says this, more tears stream down his face while the cigarette remains lit in his mouth. With his hand on his face and in a regretful tone, the father says that when the virus spread, he was on a mission and could have been with her at the time, and that if he had been with her, he would have ensured her safety. With a reassuring smile, the protagonist says that the daughter of someone as strong as him must be strong too. In the present, in the classroom, the girl begins to meditate and use the breathing technique. Following the boy's instructions, she continues practicing meditation, and he says they will leave the next day. He notices she is successfully gathering the virus cells, even though it isn't much. It will be enough. He lights another cigarette and goes to the window to smoke. Before being reborn, Uncle Luo, the mentor and friend of our protagonist, went through a lot to master these exercises, and Zuo was his only apprentice. Now, after reincarnating, Zuo is teaching these techniques to his daughter, making him wonder if it could be fate. At the top of the school, inside the emergency stairs, we see bloodstains on the door. The blood-soaked stairs lead down to a specific place, a semi-open door. Inside the room, an infected person on the floor seems to be emanating a different energy. Its cells are evolving. They appear to be multiplying and enhancing, evolving to the next stage. Suddenly, what was once a common infected seems to have become a much worse threat. Back in the classroom, the protagonist talks to his friend's daughter. He asks her if she knows how to use a gun, and she says her father probably taught her. The protagonist advises her to keep the gun's safety off, as any situation could be dangerous. When the boy says she understood everything quickly, she responds it's because she's seen many people die. He advises her to practice in silence, and the girl, questioning if he killed all the zombies with his technique, says she wants to be stronger than him. He replies that she must practice if she wants to achieve such a feat and asks her where the generator is. The girl explains that the generator is in the basement behind the storage room, and it's very dark there. Using his perception ability, he doesn't detect any zombies nearby. Wanting to ensure there's no one else left in the school, he thinks about making an announcement over the loudspeaker. Even though he thinks finding the generator room is important, he feels something is off. He remembers the rope he found in the police car, and considering it's the 3rd floor, it should be enough. With that, he hangs the rope and starts descending, knowing he can't waste time on zombies. Climbing down the rope, he quickly reaches the storage room. The feeling of insecurity permeating the environment was coming from this place. Because of this feeling, he wonders if the infected have already mutated. With his weapon in hand, he knows he must go in no matter what and activates his perception ability. Even with his 6th sense, he doesn't feel the presence of any infected. Calmly, he opens a door, cautiously pointing his weapon at any possible threat in front of him. He notices that the basement is quite large, and his detection might have failed, so he must be careful. 2 bright red eyes seem to be watching the protagonist. Behind him, the creature appears ready to attack. Finally, he finds the generator room and slowly opens the door. He immediately encounters an infected woman who gets up aggressively within seconds. In less than a second, he fires the gun, hitting the zombie in the head. However, unexpectedly, an evolved infected appears behind him, attempting to land an attack. Before being hit, he manages to notice the blow, and realizes it's a 2nd stage infected. The monstrous creature delivers a massive punch to the ground, causing enormous damage, but our hero manages to dodge it. He starts running extremely fast, irritated by the zombie's accelerated evolutionary rate. With his vast knowledge of the infected, he knows that from the 2nd stage, their bones become fortified, especially the skull. He knows that having a heavy weapon would make things easier. Quickly, he strikes the zombie with his axe, and realizes it had no effect, so he must escape as quickly as possible. The monster knocks down a door, while the protagonist runs up the stairs in a strategic retreat. The creature continues screaming at him. He taunts the creature, asking if it really thinks it can kill him after following him to the surface. In an open area, the protagonist has the advantage of fighting the creature without haste. He swings the crowbar at the zombie's jaw, causing it to spin and fall down the stairs. Falling down several flights of stairs, the zombie seems to suffer significant damage. However, it quickly gets up as if nothing had happened, letting out a thunderous roar of rage that the whole school can hear. Luo Lansha is startled when she hears the roar. The zombies seem attracted by the sound and start running through the corridors. They seem hypnotized, heading towards the sound. They begin to move through the courtyard towards the storage room. Realizing that the zombie isn't stopping its scream, the protagonist concludes it must be calling other infected. He leaps while striking the evolved infected to stop it from continuing to call other zombies. The move works, and this time the zombie appears to be hurt. Immediately, the protagonist steps on it and prepares for another series of attacks. Consumed by anger and euphoria, he delivers multiple blows with his weapon. Gritting his teeth and overwhelmed by rage, the protagonist yells at it to die already. But he notices more infected coming up the stairs. The evolved infected quickly gets back up. Realizing there are too many infected around, our hero thinks of climbing the stairs to gain an advantage. He quickly dodges another punch from the buff zombie, and decides to retreat at lightning speed. The buff zombie starts chasing him, along with 4 others it summoned. Using his ability, he detects the presence of the 4 zombies. He realizes this zombie hasn't fully evolved because second stage ones can summon 10 at a time. Gaining momentum from the wall and planning an attack, the protagonist intends to end this quickly. The zombies look at him. Firing consecutive shots from his weapon, the protagonist hits the buff zombie. He quickly switches weapons, grabbing his crowbar and striking the first stage zombies. They all seem hurt, but the evolved buff one appears to be getting more irritated. With a bullet lodged in its forehead, it looks deeply annoyed. Our protagonist knows that the pistol bullets won't kill the zombie but will slow it down. And with this delay, he creates an opening to attack with his crowbar. They lock eyes at the moment of the strike. Thus, the protagonist manages to knock down and kill the buff zombie with his attack. The scariest thing about these second stage zombies is that they can call for backup and make stealth attacks. With the zombie dead, the protagonist decides to go back and turn on the electricity. Looking down, he sees that the zombie attracted all the zombies to the first floor of the school. Back in the school corridors, he finds an infirmary. Entering, he grabs a medical emergency kit, taking medicinal alcohol, among other things. Opening the window, he starts throwing the alcohol. The zombies are startled by the bottles of alcohol being thrown. Some even hit a few infected on the head. Finally, he lights a bottle with a lighter and throws it out the window. All the gathered zombies are set on fire by the Molotov cocktail. Lua watches the flames from the top floor. Seeing how strong the flames were, she is impressed. At that same moment, the lights come back on in the school, and the girl notices this. Our protagonist begins to test the school's loudspeakers. The girl says she understands now. When he calls for Xian, he realizes he said her name affectionately, and corrects himself, calling for Surua Xian. He announces he is there to save her, and that if she is still in the building, she should meet him at the gate the next day. He says that even if she finds it strange since they don't know each other, he asks for her trust. He hopes to find Xian at the school the next day. Night falls at the school. Our hero returns to the classroom with Luo, who says she heard the announcement and understands their situation. Luo believes that Zuo had a love at first sight for Xian, fell madly in love with her, and is some kind of stalker. He interrupts her with a pat, saying she's making all this up. Finally, he asks her to rest since they'll be leaving early the next day. The day dawns, and Luo Lansha has just woken up from a restless night's sleep. Zuo is already up and says they are leaving, and Luo tells him that Xian is at the gate. Impulsively, he runs toward the outside of the school, passing by several of the zombie bodies he killed the previous day. With his back turned, he sees the most important person in his life, Xian. Internally, he is happy to see her again. He gets excited and shouts Xian's name, but when she turns around, it's a completely different person. Our protagonist is confused and stunned, not understanding. Regaining his senses, he asks the two if they have seen Surua Xian, and they say no. The two completely unknown girls start flirting with the protagonist, telling him to stay with them. Sharply, he tells them to get out of his sight immediately. They are scared by the way he speaks, and even Luo's hamster tells them to scram. Luo asks her hamster to stop. The protagonist angrily asks the strange girl if she was bitten. He starts cursing at her for being bitten and not saying anything. Pointing the gun at her face, he concludes that she must have been bitten about 20 minutes ago and will transform in an hour. The strange girl says it was just a scratch and that nothing will happen, but her friend gets irritated and pushes her. The other friend claims she wasn't scratched and asks to be taken along. Her best friend grabs her arm, saying she gave her water, and the other says she doesn't want to die. Begging to be taken along, the betraying friend claims she'll do anything and calls her friend a monster. Suddenly, in an instant, the almost transformed strange girl bites her friend on the shoulder. The three of them look at each other in absolute shock at what just happened. The friend tells her to let go of her shoulder because it hurts a lot. Saying she's a monster, she declares she'll take her friend with her, and they will both transform. Our survivor says she's almost transformed, which means the other one is also infected. She falls to her knees, saying to herself that this is impossible, and she doesn't want to die. Meanwhile, her friend laughs maniacally after committing such an evil act. Seeing this situation, the protagonist appears indifferent and says that Xian isn't at the school. While the girl cries, he and Luo leave through the front gate of the school. Shocked, the protagonist says his motorcycle is gone, which means they will have to walk. Looking at the hamster, he asks if its name is Shangbiao and says it will be very useful because it's special. Saying he feels something coming from inside Shangbiao, it seems like it has evolved somehow. He comments that the only research on the apocalypse is based on the experiences that happened to them. Luo asks how he knows so much if the incident happened only 4 days ago. Our protagonist replies that he went back in time and that the hamster might have powers they don't know about. Suddenly, Zuo hears gunshots in the distance, and Luo responds that there is a police station nearby. She says they should check out the police station, and Luo replies that they will be safe with the police. He nods and laughs sarcastically. Approaching the police station, they see a shootout where officers are shooting at zombies surrounding the place. Many zombies are shot in the head and fall dead instantly. The officers' fire bursts from their guns, spitting bullets at high speed. Taking cover behind the police cars, they shoot the infected, and Luo watches the scene in shock while Zuo seems indifferent. One officer talks to Mr. Lin, saying they won't last much longer since they're running out of bullets. Mr. Lin asks them to hold on a bit longer, as they've only had time to evacuate half the citizens. Following the order, the officer tells them to form a defensive line. Luo, disappointed on the ground, says she thought this place was safe, and the protagonist responds that there are no safe places anymore. Putting out his cigarette, he seems to make a decision, and Luo asks where they are going. Activating his detection ability, he sees 4 zombies in the area. He tells her to wait there and not let her guard down. Entering the building, he encounters only 3 of the 4 zombies he detected. They notice the protagonist and charge at him. Quickly, he sweeps their legs, and as he knocks the zombie to the ground, he also tears its head off. Luo's hamster starts growling as the buff zombie tries to hit the protagonist. In response, he swings his crowbar into its face. As he prepares to strike the buff zombie, he notices something. Behind Luo Lansha, the 4th zombie appears, ready to bite her, but the protagonist manages to warn her in time. In shock, Luo turns to the zombie, trembling with fear. As she reaches out her hand for Luo, the zombie prevents Zuo from helping her. Irritated by this, the protagonist slaps the zombie in the face. A slap that breaks the creature's jaw, and then he crushes its head, twisting its head back and breaking it with a superhuman strength. He yells at the girl to shoot the zombie behind her as quickly as possible. The girl, trembling, aims at it, telling it to back off. The moment the zombie growls and charges at her, the girl fires without hesitation. The powerful shot blows off half the zombie's face. It immediately falls lifeless to the ground. With the gun barrel still hot and smoking, the girl breathes a sigh of relief. At that moment, while she is in a state of shock, the protagonist extends his hand to her with a light, friendly smile. She apologizes for getting distracted, and he just advises her always to be aware of her surroundings. He congratulates her for killing her first infected. He says they can see the fight through the window, and the girl asks why they don't help in the battle. He replies that this kind of shooting attracts zombies from kilometers away, making it very dangerous. Zuo says it would be suicide since it's 10 police officers against 10,000 undead. Luo tells them to get out of there, but our most beloved survivor says to wait. Smoking on the balcony and watching the police, he says they will take their weapons when they leave. Outside, the shootout continues fiercely. The officer tells Oldlin they can't hold on much longer and must retreat. Shouting, Oldlin tells all units to prepare to retreat and return to the original formation. Luo, who is watching the scene, informs the protagonist that they are retreating. Saying he searched everywhere, he shows that he only found a knife and a few other things. Luo asks if they can try using the car key to find the corresponding vehicle and use it. The protagonist hands her a knife to use as a backup since they are running out of ammunition. Suddenly, without any apparent cause or intention, she strikes with the knife at Zuo, who just catches it between his fingers. The girl retorts that she was following his advice to gain experience through tough fights, and she doesn't want to be a burden. She also questions why they haven't encountered any evolved infected, and he responds that only 1 in 100 evolves. Explaining to her, he says that the second stage improves speed and strength, but they are still within human capacity. The problem is that they gain the ability to make surprise attacks and summon other infected. He comments that heavy weapons are quite effective against them, and the next stages won't appear for a long time. Asked about the time it takes for them to evolve, the protagonist responds that the second stage takes between a week and a month. Noting through the window that the infected are following the police as they retreat, he sees this as their chance. With the moon lighting their path, they both descend the building and head to the street. Using the car remote, they find the corresponding vehicle. They gather the supplies and use the car to get to the police station. The protagonist tells Luo to stay close to him since there still might be zombies around. He also asks her to leave her pet in the car and take everything out of her backpack. Binoculars observe the two entering the building. The guy using the binoculars tells his boss that the police and zombies have disappeared. His boss tells him to give more information. He comments that a couple entered, and the girl is quite pretty. Finally, they say the two have already entered the building. The boss, with an intimidating expression, asks if he's messing with him. He orders his other two henchmen to go get more weapons at the police station. He also plans to kidnap the girl. On the cold, dark night, they walk down the street. 3 henchmen and their boss, all with a thuggish posture. Entering the police station, several mutilated bodies are scattered around. Blood is spread across the room and the furniture. The protagonist concludes that the police cleaned up the area and says to check the storage room, and Luo suggests they split up. Going to the second floor, he tells the girl to be careful, and she nods. Climbing the stairs and using his detection ability, he doesn't see any infected. Trying the doorknob, he finds the door locked and quickly decides to kick it down and break it open. With the door wide open and on the floor, he finds the storage room. He can't contain a reaction of surprise at the environment he finds. Happy, he says he hit the jackpot. Opening a black box, he finds 2 simple pistols. Holding 2 other larger guns, he wonders if this is all the police equipment. He realizes they didn't have time to check this batch, so if he keeps looking, he will surely find many weapons. Some time passes, and Luo finds bulletproof vests, batons, helmets, but no weapons. She seems bothered by the lack of equipment there. Hearing the sound of a can being kicked, she thinks it's Tianchen. But she comes across 4 thugs armed with melee weapons. The boss tells his 2 brothers to search the upper floor while he and his other henchmen will check this floor. Quickly noticing the presence of strangers, Luo arms herself with the pistol. Aware that it could be a dangerous situation, she decides to hide. The moonlight illuminates the storage room, giving a clear view of the furniture. A noise indicates someone is opening the door. A crack opens, and yellow eyes observe through it. Luo sees one of the henchmen talking to his boss about the storage room. The boss scolds him and hits him to make him stay quiet so that the two don't notice their presence. The girl realizes at that moment that the men know they are in the building. As the 2 men decide to check the direction where she is hiding, the girl keeps her weapon pointed. They pass by closely and don't see anything useful in the surroundings. Just as they start to leave and decide to check another place, the girl lowers her weapon. But suddenly, the door swings open, and a man in a yellow jacket appears. Luo continues to point her gun at him, trembling. Despite facing death, he gives a sly smile. Putting everything in his backpack, Zuo notices it is full and decides it's time to return to Luo. As he takes a step, he senses something strange in the air. Quickly, he takes cover behind the wall to hide. Beside him, 2 people walk down the corridor. The guy in the hat asks if the protagonist will give them trouble, but his friend says their boss is a martial arts champion. Wisely, the guy in the red hat asks what if the protagonist has a weapon, and his friend says they have 4 people. The strongest man says he will take the protagonist by surprise by sneaking through the shadows. But before he can do anything, our hero appears behind the thug, ready to strike. With a single blow, the tall, dark-skinned man is already on the ground, unconscious. Our protagonist imagines there must be more of them, as they mentioned a boss. At that moment, a kind of sixth sense makes him feel that Luo might be in danger. Meanwhile, Luo Lansha points her gun, trembling, at the man. Aiming with a tense yet angry expression, the man responds with a sarcastic smile. The 2 thugs raise their hands in surrender. Asking her to lower the gun, the man remains calm, smiling slightly. With a furrowed brow and clenched teeth, Luo Lansha doesn't seem to yield to their demands. In a calm tone, the man says he isn't ill-intentioned and just wants to talk. Still unyielding, she says they have nothing to talk about and that they should leave. Trying to calm her, the man says life isn't as easy as it used to be, and they can help each other and explore together. The 2 of them smile at each other with a malicious tone. Luo tells them not to come any closer, or she will shoot. Boldly, she pulls the trigger forcefully. The 2 are startled by this action, but nothing happens. The gun doesn't fire. The boss grabs her by the arm and says he will teach her something. That before shooting, she should take off the safety first. He gets close to her face and asks what she thinks about going out with him. Putting her hand on his, the boss starts to get excited, getting closer to him and speaking in a neutral tone. Suddenly, her expression changes, and she knees the boss in the groin with all her strength. His whole face contorts with pain, and he is paralyzed by it. Falling to his knees, his henchman asks if his boss is okay. At that moment, she sees an opening to escape and starts running. She begins to run for her life down the corridors of the building, but the henchman's hand reaches her, pulling the girl by the collar and holding her in his arms. She tries to break free and screams because of it. Irritated, the criminal points a gun at her head. In a vile and malicious tone, he says if she moves, he will shoot. Suddenly, something seems to distract the bandit. A noise coming from the dark corridor ahead makes the bandit question what is happening. Unexpectedly, the hamster Shangbiao appears with its bright eyes and an expression never seen before on its face. Sighing in relief, the bandit realizes it's just a hamster. But quickly, the hamster starts climbing up the bandit's leg, crawling inside his pants and biting his leg. As he writhes in pain, Luo Lansha approaches and bites the criminal too. The bandit starts shaking all over, and Luo sees an opening to escape. Irritated with the hamster that won't stop biting him, he grabs it and tries to kill it. But Shangbiao bites his hand before he can crush it. Falling to the ground, the hamster runs back to its owner. Luo Lansha picks it up. Completely enraged, he says he was forced to do this after what just happened, and immediately starts shooting at the girl and the hamster. The girl starts running, and none of the shots hit her. She jumps with all her might into the corridor where she will be safe and protected, managing to land on the stairs without a scratch from the bullets. A bit hurt from the fall, she notices a hand reaching out to her. Tianchen appears to help Luo Lansha, so it tells her to be quiet and make less noise while taking cover. The criminal starts shouting for the girl to come out of hiding and show herself. His boss appears, calling for the fourth brother. He asks if his boss is okay, and the boss replies that he is, but he almost got screwed because of the girl. Talking, he says that now both of them know they are here because of the gunshots. The thug comments that the girl couldn't have gone far, and his boss says the shots were loud, so the brothers must have heard. Luo Lansha asks what they should do, and Zwa first asks if her leg is okay and tells her not to panic. She says it's nothing serious, just a little sore. Our hero says he will carry her, and the girl reacts with embarrassment and shyness. The protagonist quickly says there is no time to be embarrassed. With the girl in his arms, our survivor starts running extremely fast, commenting that the gunshots will attract the infected. The girl remains embarrassed. As they are almost there, they suddenly run into two of the brothers from the group of criminals. The two point their weapons at the protagonist, smiling maliciously. Turning his head back, he notices the other two brothers also pointing their weapons. On a flight of stairs, the protagonist and Luo Lansha realize they are cornered with no way out and no options. The guy in the red hat mentions that there are still weapons in the storage room that will be left for them. Instigating the protagonist to put Luo down, the boss says they don't stand a chance against 4 people. Internally, the hero thinks he should have finished off the other 2 brothers when he had the chance. Gritting his teeth while the girl starts crying, the protagonist knows he has no other option. Suddenly, the boss is in shock. Red lines start to appear on the protagonist's bracelet, resembling flames. His arm glows red as he takes on a stern, unyielding pose. His expression changes, becoming serious and unwavering, bordering on hatred. One of the brothers shouts for the second brother to be careful. Suddenly, the protagonist jumps over one of them, preparing to strike. The second brother watches this happen, stunned. Our protagonist widens his eyes as he sees him firing a bullet from his weapon. With superhuman agility, the protagonist dodges the shot with ease. With his mouth open and eyes wide in disbelief, the second brother can't believe what he just saw. And before he can do anything, he receives a powerful punch right in the middle of his face. A punch that makes the second brother spin and fly. Such is the magnitude of the force. In the blink of an eye, the thug hits the wall, already dead. His eyes roll back, blood trickling from his head and mouth, indicating he is dead. Seeing the scene, the other brother in the red hat looks shocked. Shouting and cursing the protagonist, he draws his pistol and aims at his back. In an instant, the protagonist swings a massive kick to the thug's face. He spins as he takes the kick and spits a lot of blood from his mouth. Below the stairs, the thugs shout for the third brother, who falls down the flight of stairs. Meanwhile, the protagonist calls the girl to leave. Their boss asks if the third brother is okay while the one in the blue jacket keeps shooting. The shots hit the wall next to Luo Lansha, who is startled by the burst. They continue hitting the wall, and none hit the protagonist or his friend. One of the brothers comments that they have disappeared, and the boss tells him to go after them. Looking through the window, they see there's a full trash can down below. He asks her to jump into the trash can and then hide in the car because the place is no longer safe. She hesitates about jumping out the window, but the protagonist encourages and urges her. Still unsure about jumping, Zuo urges her on, saying the attackers have arrived. With the window open, the protagonist gives her a push so she will go. The girl lands safely but irritated in the trash can on the ground floor of the building. Meanwhile, the remaining 3 brothers approach, armed and furious with our hero. Drawing 2 swords from his back, our protagonist knows he can't maintain the virus's stimulation much longer. Gaining extreme speed, the protagonist charges at the remaining ones with his weapons in hand. Reacting extremely quickly to Tianchen's movement, the thugs start shooting in desperation. With superhuman agility, The protagonist dodges all the shots without apparent effort. The boss looks terrified at the human being in front of him, who more closely resembles a monster. At the moment he tries to shoot Zuo, he hits him instead. Seeing his arm fly through the air, the boss panics and screams in pure agony. As the boss is in absolute shock, Zuo takes advantage of it and delivers an extremely powerful kick to his face. The kick sends him flying, possibly breaking some bones. While their boss is sent flying, the other two brothers watch the entire scene in terror. One of them remains paralyzed, while the other starts running toward the protagonist. But Zuo appears in front of both of them in an instant. They look in shock at the monster in front of them. In the blink of an eye, severed fingers fly through the air. They scream in agony from the sharp pain they are feeling as our hero sheathes his swords. Quickly, he grabs both by the neck. Lifting them and choking them, he says he doesn't like killing humans. With a wicked expression on his face, Zuo Tianchen says they asked for this. We see a parallel of this scene in an artistic oriental style. While the protagonist continues to hold the two in the air, we see the streets outside. Many footsteps approaching indicate a horde of zombies coming. When the protagonist senses this, he drops the two. Our video ends here. Subscribe to the channel to see the next part. Until next time, bye.